So I'm here today with Richard Hardy, who's one of our ministers within the association. Richard, do you want to just explain who you are and a little bit about your context where you minister?
Yeah, I'm Richard Hardy. I've been at Albany Road Baptist Church in Cardiff, and I know that means that some of you will immediately groan. But I've been there 10 years. I only came for 3 years, but God takes longer and has other ideas. I'm the minister of the church. We are a reasonably large church in South Wales terms, I guess. But we're looking to engage with our community. We're looking to become a church that's been inside, that goes outside. And we are facing all the same challenges that everybody else is facing.
Okay, so do you want to just explain for me a little bit about what the church is like, what makes up the church, what keeps the church ticking?
When I first arrived 10 years ago, I would honestly say that it was a white middle-class church. In fact, it's really interesting. They decided to do a sort of survey of their influence, and so they got a map. And they drew on the map what they thought their patch was. And they literally, and this is no joke, they drew a line across the front of the stairs of the building, and they went back behind the building into the area where they all lived. Now, in one sense, that was okay, but what they were doing was cutting out the area of social deprivation that was just across the road. And I guess in the last 10 years, what we've seen is that we did the exercise again about 3 years ago, and they put the church in the center, which I know isn't ideal because it's building centric, but they drew the line right around the church. So what we've done in the last 10 years is encompass the area of social deprivation. So we've got an area of middle classdom behind us, and we've got this area of social deprivation in front of us. And the church demographically on a Sunday is beginning to represent both sides of the equation. But we focused far more on terms of what we do 80% of the time, not what we do on Sunday, though that's important, but is very sort of come to us, but actually what we do in the week and how we get our congregation to go out into the world and begin to be salt and light in the darkness. And we've invested money in that, we've invested time in that, and we are seeing so much more of what we do being about engagement with those who are really struggling outside. I often think about it in terms of the emperor's new clothes, you know, where the little boy tells everybody that they're naked, but tells the king really. And in some ways, that's what we're doing. We are going out and helping people where they feel naked, wretched, and blind.
Brilliant. So do you want to just explain some of the examples that you've done within your life as a congregation to get people to be salt and light in their everyday life?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, and I mean this most sincerely, I will try anything. One of the biggest challenges is to be able to get people out of their comfort zone, and to be honest with you, the present crisis is forced people to do just that because they can't do the things that they normally do, and they're either doing nothing or they're thinking about something new. But what we've tried to do is I've tried to present to them many opportunities. So we have a pub immediately across the road in the area of social deprivation. Interesting pub in that every Friday night we used to hold a prayer meeting, and we'd stop the prayer meeting to watch the police run into the pub and drag people out and watch the fights. So it's an interesting area, but we've built a relationship with the local pub, and in it we've done Alpha, we've done gig nights, we've done all sorts of things. And it wasn't so much that I wanted for us to engage with the populace in the pub, because that hasn't actually worked. I wanted to get my people even a little way out of the building and across the road. So that's been good. We've built relationship with the local primary schools. I went into a primary school when I first arrived, and I said, what can we do to help? And they immediately went, well, you could come in and do assemblies. And I went, no, I don't want to do that. And they looked completely confused. And I said, no, what are your needs? And what are the needs of your families? What can we do to help? And they came up with 5 different things, 3 of which we couldn't even begin to address at the time. But we began to tackle the first 2. And over the course of the last 10 years, we've tackled the other 3. And now we have this fantastic relationship with 4 schools, and we're just about to go into another one, supporting families, supporting the staff in loads of practical ways, one of which is a thing called CHOMP, which is about food poverty. and helping families in great need that have free school meals or just don't qualify for free school meals during the holiday times. And we have about 80 families come regularly. We do it on a Tuesday and a Thursday during holiday times, right the way through the summer. And we look to engage with them. We've had fantastic spiritual conversations. We had a Muslim imam brought his family, and he asked the question, why are you doing this? Because the mosque wouldn't do it. And he sat in the corner for almost 6 weeks reading the Bible. He asked for a Bible. And when I said to him, why are you reading the Bible? He said, well, where else can I read it? I can't do it in the mosque. And we had incredible conversations. And so it's opened, I believe that verse from Proverbs, a free gift opens the way for the giver and ushers him into the presence of the great. If you can do something sacrificial, something that is beyond what people expect, they'll ask the question, why? The minute they ask that, the words come so much easier because they've built a credibility. So that's what we're trying to do. There's just a couple of examples. We're doing other things, but that's what we're doing.
Brilliant. And how, in that transformation of change within church attitude, how have the church responded to some of the stuff that you've been doing with the area of social deprivation?
Oh, it's been fantastic. It's all been plain sailing, and they've all embraced me and loved me, and I get so many kisses. And yeah, right. It's not been like that at all. Somebody said to me years ago that a church is a bit like a steam train. There are people at the front piling on the coal going, go faster, go faster. You just can't go fast enough for them. And we've got a few of those. And to be honest with you, I'm so grateful for them because it's great to be having to hold somebody back. Then there's people at the back with the brakes on. There's more of those, or there have been, and they're going, go slower, go slower. And I've had a few people that in the 10 years I've been there have never spoken to me until this present crisis. Because they see me as the agent of the destruction of what they've held precious and most dear, and that's been really hard. And then there's the vast majority who are sort of running up and down the carriages, not really knowing where they are at any moment in time. And we've spent a lot of time trying to encourage them, trying to inspire them, trying to tell them great stories that other people in the church are doing that lead them to the front carriages. It's been painstaking. I mean, I'd love to tell you that, Hayley said that we've transitioned, we've transformed the church. We haven't done that yet. We're still in the process. We're still working at it. But it is getting better. The head of steam is growing, and that's been really encouraging.
Brilliant. So where are you seeing God's kingdom move within your church and community at this moment in time?
I think, if I'm honest, it's moving outside the building, or should I say he's moving outside the building, because there's no such thing as the kingdom without the king, is there? And we're teaching the congregation that if you want to get with the king's business, he's working outside of the church. He's working outside of Sunday far more than he's working inside of Sunday. And unless you join him in it, you're going to find yourself in a situation where your church really doesn't stand an earthly of survival, because he very rarely visits. I say this advisedly. I don't think he's in the business of patting us on the back and keeping us comfortable. And therefore, we're seeing the kingdom work in the things that we're doing that are far more satellited, that are getting us out of the building, because they're giving us the platform to build credible conversation and credible care for those who are so desperately, desperately in need. I mean, at the moment, I've got a lady that's phoning me up every day, at least 4 times a day, whose life has been horrendous. She's not a member of my congregation. She lives in the locality. She's desperate for conversation. At the end of every conversation, she says, thank you for listening to me. People don't. And I can understand why. Her life's in complete meltdown. And then yesterday, she suddenly said out of the blue, with no reason at all, really, apart from the fact I listened, well, who is Jesus anyway? And we had this in a moment of sanity, in a moment of clarity. And I don't use that word sanity because I'm making a judgment, because she uses it. She paused and listened, and we made progress. and a lot of the folk that we're involved in around our area are people who are in very similar situations of varying flavors. So that's been really encouraging. Now, at the minute, it's a nucleus that are involved in that, but the crisis is adding people, because they're talking to their neighbors, and they're discovering that their neighbors are really struggling. And so I think for me, that's where the kingdom is working. As far as church is concerned, I'm a dinosaur, to be honest with you. I don't think church in its present form, stuck in a building, is going to last much longer. And the more we can do to get out into coffee shops and be church, to get online and be church, to engage with people where people are, is going to make us light in the darkness. I think the problem is that many of our people think that they're frightened of the dark. They think that if they go out there, they will be overwhelmed by the darkness. And what they've lost is a sense of the power of Jesus. You know, our light is greater than any darkness. And darkness never overcomes light, no matter how small it might be. It may only be a match, but a match can dispel all darkness. And we are more than a match, because Jesus says that he's the light of the world. And then he points to us and goes, you're the light of the world. And we need to take that seriously. That's the sermon. Sorry.
Thank you. I knew a Baptist would get a mini sermon in there somewhere.
Yeah, well, at least one.
So when you think about mission, when you think about the mission of God, what does that mean for you personally and as a church minister?
To be honest with you, I came into ministry not to pander to or to really care for the congregation. Now, don't get me wrong, I deeply care for them and I love them to bits. I mean, I said to them this week, I don't always like you, but boy, do I love you. And they feel the same. And but I suppose the thing that's really sort of struck me is that we have got to get out in mission. So mission is the thing that really makes me, sparks me, gets me out of bed in the morning. My kids would say that if I had £1 for every time Dad talks about engaging with community, I would be a very wealthy person, because that's it. You cut me and I'm talking about missional engagement. I'm talking about community. I'm talking about that stuff, because Jesus is the answer, guys. He's the answer. And people are asking questions, but they don't know what the answer is. And we need to show that and share that. And so as a church, we have a mission statement that says that we exist to know, grow, go, and show, to know Christ, to grow in faith, to go to the world, and to show God's love. And a disciple for us is somebody who's doing, in one form or another, those four things. So I spend a lot of my time helping people to make the steps from knowing the one who makes the difference, to stepping out in faith and taking a risk, to going to the world and showing God's love, wherever that world may be. And that's what I think mission and ministry is all about. That's what we are. That's what I was called to do. I was called to save the world. And I very quickly realized I couldn't do it single-handedly. So I'm constantly looking to recruit. I'm doing it now. I want to recruit you. If you're not already, if you've got embroiled in the inner workings and the politics, use this opportunity to shed that stuff if you can. And if you can't talk, let's talk, let's have a conversation, because I want to learn from you, and maybe I've got something to share that you can be helpful to you. But that's what I think ministry is about. That's what I think mission's about. And that's what I want to be involved in for the rest of my life, to be honest. And if it was possible, beyond.
Brilliant. So what's been your biggest challenge in ministry?
Well, apart from me, you mean?
Yeah, apart from yourself. What's been the biggest challenge?
I think it's not been without cost trying to transition and transform a church. In the 10 years I've been in this church, and prior to that in other churches, there has been a lot of pain. There's been a lot of blood on the carpet. And to be honest with you, generally it's been my blood on the carpet. And my wife sometimes says, it's a wonder to me that you've actually survived, let alone thrived in ministry. And I think I've thrived. I don't know. It depends which part of the coin I look at any moment in time. So there have been times when when you deal with hurt people, they hurt people. And if you're the one trying to help, you tend to be the one that ends up being the victim of their ire, of their anger. And it's not always about you. So as we've tried to change things in the church, we've had opposition, we've had disgruntled members, we've had people, there are those moments, aren't there? And I don't want to over spiritualize it, but there are those moments when the church is beginning to go on the change, and then somebody comes in from outside that sort of wows everybody, and they seem to be God's gift to X or Y or Z, and they're embraced and they're brought in, and sometimes they even get on the leadership, and they cause chaos. And to be honest with you, we've had a bit of that. I've had to do some quite unpopular things. In my first 2 years, we had a member of staff that we had to make redundant because of our financial situation. That was not easy, but it was a tough choice that had to be made. And I would say to you, I guess, from my experience, is don't shirk the tough choices. You'll always regret it. Remember what you came into ministry to be and to do, and do it with all your heart. And don't allow other things to get in the way. The problem, I think, in terms of our theological training sometimes is that we're trained to be general practitioners, to be master of, to know everything, but sort of to be master of nothing. And I've realized that I'm called to be a specialist. I'm called to do one or two things really well, and I give my heart to that. But if I try and do the other things, and I do, because sometimes they need to be done, I don't do them as well as the person that God's calling to do them. And sometimes it's better they're not done. Because if I'm running myself ragged, doing 80% of the stuff I should not be doing, that's not helping the church. Does that make sense? I hope it does, because that's what I'm trying to do.
Brilliant. And how do you cultivate a team around you to support you in mission and ministry?
To be honest with you, I'm trying to do two things at one and the same time. I'm trying to not develop a team, because the danger is that the congregation leave it to the team. And I want to try and get everybody involved. So there's a sense in which, I personally think, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but in a smaller church, sometimes that's easier, because if there's 12 of you or 14 of you, you've all sort of got to participate, haven't you? And I know that doesn't always work out, but I suppose I perceive that we can have an awful lot of hangers-on. In fact, actually, we worked out a little while ago that of the, 150 members that we've probably got about 40 that are doing pretty much everything, which doesn't make us a big church. It makes us a small church with a lot of, I'm going to say it, hangers-on. And I don't mean that in quite the way it sounds. So I've tried not to develop team, but by the same token, one of the things that's coming out of the crisis for us is that we need to be better organized. I do have a fantastic joint leadership team. That's what we call them. They're made up of sort of elder figures and deacon figures, and they work alongside me. I'm in a privileged position that I've actually got a small staff, and they are fantastic and have been incredibly supportive. And that's, I don't in any way take that for granted, because I recognize the privilege of that. But it's a combination, really. And then we've got people who are serving in an area of their passion, and they form a team around that particular passion. So toddler group, for example, or lunch club, or a thing called Knit, Stitch and Sew that's having an incredible impact on the community. We've got an art class that's doing a similar thing and using art as a means of expressing faith and introducing people to faith. And different people lead those different things, and they sort of coordinate with me because I'm there most often. And that's working quite well. So it's a sort of centralized and dispersed leadership. That the reason why I've tried to do that is because I would rather, instead of having a sort of hierarchy of leadership, which is what churches quite like to do because there's an element of control. We like to control, don't we? What we're trying to do is a spider web of interconnected relationship. So it's stronger. And if something stops, something closes, and we expect things to close on a regular basis because projects sometimes have a short shelf life, then it disappears, but the rest of the structure doesn't go as a consequence. Now, we're not there yet. We've got more need than we have people to fill those needs, as I guess most churches have, but that's what we're trying to do.
Okay. So if you were to go back just before your ordination, I know that was a few years ago now, and give yourself a bit of advice from what you've picked up along the way, what would it be?
You're in it for the long haul. I mean, I offered to the church that I would be there for 3 days a week, 3 Sundays a month for 3 years, because I was doing other things. I got to the end of year 3 and realized I hadn't even started. And I've been there 10 years now. And I had a conversation with one of my elder figures in the church and said, look, am I past my sell-by date? Is it time I moved on? And she said, without blinking, she said, no, it isn't time you moved on. And I said, why is that? They said, because you haven't finished what you came here to do. So I think, you know, I mean, I'm getting older and I'm thinking about I'm thinking about what I'm going to do in the next 10 years. I'd be quite happy to be in this church for the next 10 years if that's what God wants. But at the end of the day, I want to do what God wants. And I think the thing you realize as you get older is you haven't got time to mess about. Not because I'm looking to an early grave, but because I'm probably less tolerant of drivel now than I was in my middle age. If I'm old, well, I don't know. I'm probably regaining the intolerance I had when I was in my 20s, and I don't see that as a bad thing. I don't know whether that answers the question, but
Yeah, no, that's great. And how do you maintain your own personal relationship with God while trying to lead a church?
you know, that was the question I was hoping you weren't going to ask me. You will already have gathered by watching this that I am a bit of an activist. I'm not generally quite a contemplative. In fact, actually, I don't think I have an original thought unless I get into a conversation with somebody, because they spark things in me. And so I tend to get I read the Bible, I pray, I do those things, and they are absolutely the lifeblood of ministry. There's no doubt about it. But I don't do a quiet time. I don't sit for an hour and a half and pray. My day is littered with prayer. My day is littered with Bible reading. I use social media massively to read, to engage with people and find out what they're thinking and find out how that's helping. I've started doing a thing called Thought for the Week, which I do on a Thursday, which is a sort of 3-minute video on a topic that I'm struggling with or thinking about. And it's, this is what I'm learning, what are you learning? And I found that's fed me. I mean, one of the things I guess somebody told me years ago was, an adult learns to be a self-feeder. The trouble is in church, we have too many little children who are going, feed me, feed me, feed me. And my wife would tell you I'm relatively self-sufficient, and that's probably true. I'm quite enjoying lockdown, if the truth be known. But I read, I pray, I read again, I engage with people, I ask questions. I found something that fits comfortably with me. It's natural for me. Too often I think what we try to do is to force ourselves to do what we aren't equipped to do. I've had several conversations, and this is slightly off the point, but I've had several conversations with people in the past 4 weeks that go, I can't do Zoom, I can't do this, I can't do that. Actually, nobody's asking you to do what you can't do. And it's the same, I think, in our discipleship. Find that which is most comfortable to you and do it with all your heart. Because we are, God's made us and wants us to be the best us we can be. So be it.
And how...
Another sermon. That was another sermon, wasn't it?
It's the joys of when you interview ministers and pastors and preachers, you just let them go.
A bottle of pop.
If we as churches, as an association, were to pray for you, what one thing would you ask us to intercede on your behalf?
I think pray for wisdom, really. Wisdom in knowing what to do and what not to do. I have a tendency to say yes when maybe I should pause and say no. Um, I, I, I genuinely want to offer to help anybody in any, in any way I can. And I guess, that sometimes leads to disappointment. So please pray that I will, I will live a balanced life where I don't get too full of myself on the one hand and don't get too down on myself on the other, but that I find that via media, that middle way that enables me to lead these congregation, lead these people at a pace that is slightly faster than they would naturally want to go, but isn't so fast that they get left behind, because that would be my tendency. And thank you for listening. You're giving some time to listen to this, and I know it's going to be edited. It needs to be edited, but thank you. Thank you for listening, and I look forward to hearing what you've got to say when Hayley gets round to you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Richard.